Good morning. For those who don't know, I'm Evon Yakar. I'm a rabbi in Lake Tahoe, and with me on Zoom this beautiful day is Suzanne Derzon, who in my family is lovingly known as Bubby because she is my kid's Bubby, my kid's great grandma, and my partner's grandmother, and my mother-in-law's mother, and so I might slip between Bubby and Susie. So, excuse me ahead of time for that. Is that all right, Susie? Susie, if you could just start by just sharing a little bit of your family's history. I know it's a long journey of decades, but the family's history with Congregation Shalom and, 2 or 3 memories and connections to that place, the physical space that you're in, not the art, we'll get there, but the congregation, but also the community at large and just the Reformed Jewish community and the Milwaukee Jewish community.
It's just been here, and it's been part of our family and who we are. And on holidays we come here, and sometimes even in between holidays we will come here. But it's our special place of comfort.
Mm. And how many generations have the Derzon family been members of Shalom?
My parents or Shelley's parents didn't belong here. Shelley's parents were Orthodox. My parents were at Emmanuel.
So, but at least 3 generations have been members and celebrated moments from you and Shelley to the next generation, your children and your grandkids have spent moments there through different religious school moments and different life cycle moments. And I know holidays, as you mentioned, and Shabbats for sure. I'm thinking about how I came to know your artwork. That experience I had of kind of just awe walking into that sanctuary. I'm thinking about early Jewish memories, and I want to share one with you and ask you about your, what are some early Jewish memories that you have in general, if you can think of one. But what I want to share with you is the first time I got to be part of your creative process. And I'm not sure that this is top on your mind, but every night when I go to sleep and every morning when I wake up, across from my bed is a beautiful ketubah. A ketubah that Rachel and I signed at our wedding, that you signed as our witness, but also the creator of it. And I remember the creative process from the paper cut to the symbolism that you asked us about, and then just rolling with your own creativity. And I also remember quite a bit of back and forth because it was important that you wrote the text. We could have printed it out or have had a Hebrew calligrapher do it. But it was important in this whole experience that you did it in the back and forth, making sure we got every letter right. And, I think we were still faxing believe it or not, in those days, we were sending it via fax back and forth to Rachel's office to make sure it was correct. And, that's a Jewish memory that I cherish, that creative process. So thinking about Jewish memories, Susie, what's an early Jewish memory of yours, either growing up or as an adult? What's something that jumps out when you think of Jewish memories?
Actually, for me, it would be just sitting in Temple Emmanuel. I would sit there and look at the ceiling, the dome ceiling, the beautiful, beautiful windows they had on each side. And I just felt very comfortable there. I loved it there. I thought it was beautiful.
I think the idea of kind of looking around and you mentioning the dome ceiling is probably different than most other buildings you were in pretty regularly as a young person or even as adult. So the uniqueness probably sticks out in your mind. Turning to the artwork, and not just your contributions, but art in general, and how art has certainly played a role since the very beginning of our story as a people. How did your artwork begin? Your career as an artist and as a Jewish artist, how did that begin?
I'm a very quiet and very private person, and I don't socialize a lot or anything, so that my artwork is an outlet for me. It's something that I've been doing and dream about and think about, and know that I can manipulate the paint or the ink and make it say what I wanted it to say. And I would always hope that my artwork would speak for itself, that people would get that, not the same message as me, but maybe the same feelings in a way. That it's my way of communication. I guess that's what I want to say. That my artwork communicates who and what I am.
I love that idea that for you it begins with being able to communicate, to convey, to inspire those feelings. And it's not going to say the same thing to each of us. And yet maybe those emotions, that feeling has some point of connection. You know, I think about how long I've known you now, Bubby, and I'm pretty sure doing the math, it's at least 21 years, believe it or not. For me, your work, your artwork has always been connected to Judaism. And I know it's not always the case, but thinking about that concept of Jewish art, what does that mean? What makes art Jewish art in your mind, from your perspective?
What makes it Jewish? It just makes it Jewish about not just what I'm drawing or portraying. It is the feeling that it has that comes from me, but it has that feeling of joy, of sorrow, of all kinds of things in different ways, and it's the way that I express myself. I don't have very many words.
Circling back to the kind of emotional response or that feeling that art in general gives us, and you sharing that it's the way you communicate, right? That what I heard in that, just reflecting back with you, is that what makes art Jewish, right, is just the feeling that it gives, right? So that if we feel connected to whatever Judaism means to each of us as Jews, or maybe even what it means for non-Jews, if that connects to Jewish concepts, ideas, feelings, history, words, then that makes it Jewish art. I'm thinking about one of the students that I worked with a number of years ago. He was trying to define Jewish art, but I remember that he researched your work, and his response to me after looking at some of your work that he was able to find, and said, you know, you look at that sanctuary and that's definitely Jewish art. And you look at some of the windows that he was able to find, and there was nothing that screamed Jewish art, but maybe where it was, or maybe knowing a Jewish artist created it. Maybe that's what makes Jewish art. So I got to watch this 12-year-old and listen to this 12-year-old kind of try to figure that out. Congregation Shalom is a Reform congregation, part of this Reform Jewish world. And the organization that I have this honor to work with, the Roots of Reform, formerly the Society for Classical Reform Judaism, is committed to, being a network of Reform Jews committed to celebrating the origins and the evolution of Reform Judaism and what it means to Reform Jews, but also the Jewish world, the Jewish landscape at large. And when you think about your work and the art that you've created, do you think that there's anything in your identity as a woman that has helped you contribute or given you a unique contribution to Jewish art? What are the ways that being a woman has contributed to your work?
Oh, I think in many ways. What comes to mind really is giving birth and having children and how I can't express my words, but I can express my joy that the children give me, that comes from them, and that I can do in my artwork. And I don't have the words for it. My artwork is just a part of me. It is who I am. And if you like my artwork, I guess you like me. But I don't.
I like that, right? It's a part of me. And if you like my art, then at least you like that part of me, right? Or, and what creates it. I mean, it's certainly a labor of love and passion that you put forth in your work, Susie.
I always expect people to, when they look at it, say they look at the window, that they come away with something that is not just a window, that it is light. It is beauty in it. It's God's light. And it's God's light that makes it good. And if that light, when they were building this room, I stood here right in this space where the camera is now. And there was just a cement floor, and there was nothing else, and there was not a wall. And I was looking at it and looking at it, and all of a sudden I realized there was light. And it's God's light, and it's that light that made the window. And that's how that window came to be. Because I stood in this place when there was nothing else there but the cement that they were digging up and redoing. And I saw the light that came from back there. And there was a road back there, and we could make a window well, and that's what makes the window good, is the light. Without the light, there would be nothing. Truly, it's the light, and I was fortunate to see the light. Like it was meant to be.
I'm so glad that finally came from you there, Susie, because that's exactly what this moment is about, right? Is what is it that inspires you? What are your contributions? And I think that celebrating them, highlighting them, we can look at this artwork and it's so magnificent. It is inspiring. It is beautiful to the beholder. And that gasp that many of us get, if not all of us, when we walk in and see it for the first time and just taking it all in. And your contribution is also the way it teaches us what you just shared. It teaches us that, the artwork is the work of our hands and our hearts and our minds working together. And that's the divine, the mystery of creation, God, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is that we believe, each of us, inspiring us, motivating us. And there's so many ways that we think about light in our tradition. We think about it as, the lights, the sun, the moon, the stars, the moon reflecting the sun's light. We think about it, in a modern tech context, we think about it as the light switch turning on the lights. But it's also kind of that supernal light, that divine spark that's within us that you're, I think, echoing. That the way the light comes through those windows, the light in each of us to see it and be inspired by it, to hear your words, to hear what you're communicating. I mean, let's remember, that this whole conversation for us to have, Susie, came about because I saw the picture of this sanctuary, of your work, on a Roots of Reform pamphlet that came to my mailbox. And I said, wait, that's Bubby's art. That's Bubby's sanctuary. That's the Shalom Sanctuary. Gosh, I'm going to call the rabbinical director. I'm going to call, Rabbi Cantor and see if there's a way we can talk more about this. And here we are. I'm thinking about all the places I've seen your art. The Ark and the Etz Chaim, the Ten Commandment windows, kind of that you get to look at right now. I'm thinking about the Talit etched in stone, stretched across that sanctuary, wrapping the community in this moment. One of my favorite parts of the Harry and Rose Samson Sanctuary. And we can read about those things on the website. And I can think about these Ehrman tapestries that you and your sister and Marcy, my mother-in-law, created for us here to have some beautiful art and a taste of family. And I'm thinking about all of those things. And I don't want to destroy too much of the family lore, right, of what sticks out in my mind about how all of those pieces of glass behind you got there. Because, there's probably some myth in there a little bit. But I have this image of you on ladders, Susie, putting those in. Don't destroy that story for me, but tell me a little bit about that creative process as well as the installation process. You mentioned standing there with the cement floor being torn up and rebuilt and noticing, right, this divine light.
That's what I was describing to you, that I stood here and saw the light. I had no idea that the window was going to be there when I came into the sanctuary. When I left the sanctuary, I knew that the window would be there. The pieces of glass, there are hundreds of pieces of glass in that window. They're thick. About an inch and a half thick. And I worked on a cement floor. And when the first line that we drew, we took a piece of metal that was maybe 15 or 20 feet long. And we made the first line for the ark around there. And then I started on my hands and knees, and I drew in the shape of every piece of glass. Every single one. I allowed an inch of cement in between. And every single piece I drew in. And they had hired a stained glass artist from New York. And he said it should be this way, with all the pieces either rectangular or square or all very, fitting together like that. And I didn't want that. And so they sent this guy, this person who had made many windows. They sent him back to New York. And I went ahead and I drew it the way I wanted it. I wanted each piece to be as different as it could be from the ones next to me. And I knew what colors I wanted to make it. I didn't know where it came from, really, but that's what I wanted. And that is the way I thought it should be. So it's different from most windows. Most stained glass you will not see cut like that. in order to cut each piece, they had to, they have a fulcrum, a metal, and they take the glass and they break it. And then they take a hammer and they hammer the edges to make the facets that catch the light. And then they put it into frames and pour the cement around it, and each frame is on there. And that's how it was done. I didn't know how it was going to be done when I started. I didn't have any idea. I had never done it before. I had never seen it before. But that's the way I wanted it. And I had to have it that way.
I hope this would happen and that I would be even more inspired and I would come to mind, things would come to mind about your work, Susie. And I'm thinking about what you just shared is I didn't know what it was going to look like. I just engaged. I knew what I wanted. And there's two things that jump out at me that I want to reflect on and highlight and lift up in your response there in your words. The first is that each of the pieces, it's not rectangles and squares and easy line, not easy, but clear lines. That's not life. And if it's going to be an Etz Chaim, right, the tree of life and symbolic of kind of this reality and these pieces, we all fit together. We just don't know how all the time. And that's community. And I that's what I see now in your window that I didn't see before. And I didn't know that part. And the other pieces that I want to lift up is you spoke about the process just needed to unfold and you needed to do it. And that's something I believe not unique to, but special within Reform Judaism that we talk about, and Reform Jewish thinkers like Abraham Geiger have written about it, ongoing revelation, this idea that the revelation from the divine God, mystery of creation, whatever we believe, is ongoing. We get to constantly be inspired by the world, by God in our world, by each other, by the divine spark, that divine light within each of us. And in a way, for me, that is uniquely Reform. That is uniquely part of our contribution to the Jewish world and the world. This morning, I'm getting to chat with you, and I'm the grandson-in-law who happens to be a rabbi. Earlier, I got to speak with Rabbi Chertkov, the senior rabbi at Shalom, and I also know that, Rabbi Shapiro, Rabbi Emeritus of Shalom, was intricately involved in this collaborative process of building this sanctuary while the art is yours, and you drove that part of it. I know that Rabbi Shapiro, that Ron had contributions, that had thoughts that were shared. What was it like working with Rabbi Shapiro? What were some, highlighted memories that you have of chatting with him, discussing what he was hoping for, you sharing what you wanted to create, or the process that you were engaging in?
It's one thing to talk about my work, and it's another thing to talk about my relationships with people. I have always admired Rabbi Shapiro. I think he's a wonderful rabbi.
Did he contribute with the quotations, make for me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, or know before whom you stand? And
there's a story to that one.
Let's hear it.
We decided to make the letters, and I guess we decided what to put up there. And he came, at the time I was working in a warehouse. I had the letters all cut out, exactly the way they are now. But I had them cut out of paper for the foundry. And we saw that all the letters were correct. And I was very happy that he came, and that it made me feel better that it was the right way, because I didn't want to make a mistake. And he walked out and he closed the door. And then I ran after him and I said, please come back and help me count the letters and just to make sure, because I was so unsure of myself. And we counted the letters, and there were 36 letters. And he didn't know it, and I didn't know it, but it was meant to be. So this whole thing, this whole sanctuary was just meant to be, I think, because I think it's the most beautiful space. It gives everybody room to breathe. You know, it's from the windows to the whole thing.
And 36, of course, being double chai, and the, Olamid Vavnakim, the idea of 36 righteous always in the world, or super righteous always in the world at a given time, and the way that the number of letters.
Neither one of us saw it when we first went over it. Neither one of us saw it. But it just, he counted them. And he said, 6. And it was so important. It was an important part of this whole room, I think, those letters up there.
Can you think of a time, Susie, that you've gotten to show someone the Samson Sanctuary, that you've gotten to be the tour guide or share it with a friend who's visiting or a family member? I know that you were with me the first time I went, but not me. Another time, can you recall one of those memories and a conversation that ensued? No?
They come and they see it and they like it or they don't like it and they go home.
I'm not sure that it's they like it or they don't like it. That's just my opinion, right? That I think that they like it. It's beautiful. Are they inspired by it? That might be the piece that's to each of us, right? Or, does everyone feel that same when they walk in? Does that light, both the actual light, the, particles of light, whatever it is, waves of light coming through, and that supernal light of inspiration strike them? I think that's the difference for those of us who experience it, who didn't create it.
I think people like it, though. I think they're happy. That's what counts for me, is that they find some goodness in this.
How do you talk about communication and the feeling and the emotions, and you want them to find goodness, and I'm circling back to a lot of what you shared earlier. How is your artwork in general, whether this sanctuary or other pieces, the work at the Jewish home, the work at the hospital in the north of Israel, these airman tapestries where you're, following a pattern of sorts. How is this artwork, your body of work, an expression of you?
It's like I feel like I'm talking with the drawing. I'm communicating with it somehow. That it's not necessarily my thinking that, I'm going to go this way or I'm going to go that way. It's that it goes. It just, I don't do work anymore. I don't do artwork anymore. All of a sudden, it's like it's shut off, and I don't want to do it anymore. I don't know what that's from, but I'm done.
Maybe it's time to think back and reflect on that body of work and be inspired by it again. Not the actual creative work, but the way that it can communicate back to you now.
Oh, that's a thought that I
Do you think there's any, stumbling blocks for Jewish art? Do you think there's any pitfalls or, challenges for kind of this? Is it ever not a good thing, or are there? Does it express something too unique sometimes, or I don't know? Are there any challenges that you can think of for this field that we're trying to, bounce around a little bit of Jewish art? For example, certain sometimes people are offended by art, or sometimes people are turned off by it. Do you think Jewish art can fall into those challenges as well? Whether it's visual art, which is in your domain, or music, or dance, or other art forms. Are there stumbling blocks for it in the future of Jewish artwork?
Oh, I think there are always stumbling blocks. I think there was on this project as well. The project was the whole project. There was a committee of 10 men. And I was house beautiful at the time. And I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I really didn't know what they were talking about. They were talking about building this, building that, and I was very uncomfortable. Until when I said, well, you have all that light there, you have to use that, you have to do something. Not the wall of Jerusalem, that wall's been done already. They said, well, if you can think of something else, you show us. And so I showed that. I had that wooden thing made that's in the office somewhere now. And I made the drawing, and I showed it. And the people liked it. So that's how it happened. But there was this thing, men with women. I mean, it was stupid. And it was hard. It was difficult. I was not comfortable.
Susie, you just wrapped up all the questions I've asked in that response, right? What is Jewish art? Well, it's something that resonates even though we've got 2 Jews and 3 opinions. We've talked about your creative process, and you shared, you got to use the light, and you got them to see and feel the light. I asked about contributing as a woman of Reform Judaism, and you found yourself on this committee of men. And we struggled with that as a people and in a movement, right? That, we didn't bring women to the conversation early enough. But we're so glad we have now, right? Because we need the human experience, not just the male experience, right? And you were able to bring that to the dialogue, and that right there, I want to lift up your contribution. Your contribution is in that art, but your contribution is being a voice at that table and a voice in that conversation in a way that it wasn't before. Not just your voice, but perhaps other women. And that's part of celebrating all of this. I think one last formal question. I'm thinking about the handful of memories I have of walking into that sanctuary for challenging moments, for celebratory moments, for Shabbat. I was there for one holiday, Sukkot. It's hard to visit another synagogue on holidays as a rabbi. I mean, it's a little hard. And I'm thinking about, those moments. What happens for you when you walk in there?
I feel comfortable.
Comfortable.
And satisfied. And I'm glad to be here. You know what I mean? I really don't own it. Because it was something, it was, I guess, I do believe in God's presence and guidance. And as much as I don't come to temple often, and I don't observe things as I should, but keep connection. Maybe what a rabbi, what you might consider the perfect person that comes to temple. I don't have the words. I never have.
I think that perfection is spoken and communicated by that window behind you. That perfection is the pieces of glass with different shapes and different edges. Some might call them weaknesses or growing edges, right? That they fit together, and that whole is that perfection. That there are some who fulfill mitzvot, do commandments. There's some who attend and engage. There's some who give what they can with their time or their resources. There's some who contribute their skill set, whether an accountant on a board as a treasurer, or the artist who can give what you have. All of those are part of what makes our communities and our people whole. And so I hear, and I don't want to, if that's the way, you have those feelings. I wouldn't discount your feelings about that, but I would say you have engaged deeply in Jewish life and in Reform Jewish life by your contributions, whether at that hospital in the Galil, in the north of Israel, or in the Jewish home in Milwaukee, or the Airman tapestries here in South Lake Tahoe, the art that's in my home and in the homes of our family, from the ketubah to the glass to a beautiful, I believe, needlepoint kippah that you made for Caleb, that every so often when he goes into the Jewish drawer to pull something out, he finds it and then wears it for the next hour or so. Susie, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you as Bubby. I'm grateful for you for your role and your love in our family. I'm grateful for the contributions that we're celebrating today to the Jewish world and to the Jewish people. And as I was sharing a moment ago, we all engage differently in our Judaism, and yours has become, in a way, not only about this artwork, but has certainly been a big component of it. And it is inspiring. It is filling all those who experience it with light, both the light that allows us to see, but also that divine light that allows us to see from in here. And so for all that, I'm grateful. May you be able to reflect on your body of artwork and be inspired again and again. May it be celebrated by all those who get to experience it. Even if they don't like all of it, may they be inspired by it. May it speak to them, because that, as you shared, was your purpose in your efforts.